Somebody was dead, his heart was dead. There's a hadith in Ibn Majah, the Prophet ﷺ said, الفرق بين الذي يذكر الله والذي لا يذكر الله كالفرق بين الحي والميت. The difference between the one who remembers Allah and the one who doesn't remember Allah is like the difference between the living and the dead. So somebody can be, their body's alive, but their heart is dead. And just like the physical heart dies, the spiritual heart dies. And just like you can have physical diseases of your heart. In fact, one of the mysteries of the heart in Western medicine is it often is diseased and there's no symptoms. It's very interesting. In other words, they can have 90% blockage in their cardiac arteries. And there's no symptoms. And suddenly they have a heart attack. And they didn't even know it. They would say, he was fine, nothing was wrong. You hear that all the time. Somebody has a heart attack, they say, he was fine. In fact, I just played tennis with him yesterday. He didn't even breathe heavy. He was in such good shape. That's what people say. He was only 45. And he just dropped dead. Because somebody can look like they're in perfect health and their heart is diseased. The same is true of the spiritual heart. Somebody can look like they're in perfect spiritual health and their heart's diseased. They don't even know it. Sometimes they don't know it, other people know it. Like a doctor, if a doctor knows signs and symptoms. You have in medicine, you have signs and symptoms. Signs, the doctor can see them himself. Symptoms, they come from the patient. There's a difference. In medicine, you have signs and you have symptoms. Alamat and a'rab. The a'rab, they have to tell you what it is. But the signs, you can see them yourself. Somebody has yellow eyes. They might not know that they've got hepatitis. But if a doctor sees them, they have yellow eyes. They're jaundiced, and they're tired, they're exhausted, their urine's yellow. He knows their liver's diseased. He might not know that because he hasn't studied medicine. So the spiritual heart has signs and symptoms as well. There's signs and symptoms. And some people recognize they're sick, other people don't. You can meet people like bad adab. A lot of people don't know they have bad adab. I'll give you an example. And I mean, this is one of those things, you know, وَقُلْ لِعَيْنِكَ يَعَيْنُ لِلنَّاسِ أَعْيُنُ. Say to your own eye, oh eye, remember other people have eyes too. In other words, when you find fault in people, people can find the fault in you. But I'm just giving you an example. Maybe you benefit from this. I was with a scholar once, and there was a student of that person who'd studied with him. This scholar mentioned a line of poetry. And it was a difficult line, and he asked this student if he understood it or not. And I don't think he did, but anyway, he said to this person, oh, I heard that from you last year. That's just bad adab. You know, if somebody tells you a story, maybe you did hear it from him last year. Listen to, maybe you're a year older. Maybe you're a year wiser. Maybe you'll understand something in it you didn't understand the first time. الْمُؤْمِنُ لَا يَشْبَعُ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ. The believer never gets tired of goodness. How many times can you hear a hadith, the same hadith, and you get a new meaning out of it? One of the things I had the good fortune a long time ago of studying with, he's one of the most learned people I've ever met, named Sheikh Bayyul Salih. He was a qadi in the Emirates. He still is. He was the head of the Mahkam al-Shar'iyya. And he's faqih, with the meaning of the word. He knows fiqh. Amongst everything else. I mean, he knows Lugha al-Arabiyya, Balagha. He knows Quran, the Qira'at Sab'ah. I mean, mashallah, he's Bahr, ocean of knowledge. I remember I used to read these things and I'd go tell him something like a story. And he used to listen and say, Subhanallah, and yata'ajjab. And I realized later, you know, it was just my own, you know, maybe enthusiasm, whatever. You know, but later I realized what impeccable adab he had. Because sometimes you tell somebody something, they say, yeah, I know that, I heard that before. And he really did. I know I didn't say anything, that he'd memorized, he could give me the commentary, he could tell me all the rhetorical subtleties of that hadith or whatever, you know. And that's the way he is. He's adib, you know, he has perfect adab. So there's a lot of things about our nature we're not even aware of, and other people see it, and we don't see it. And that's why al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min. The believer is the mirror of his believer. One of the things Shakespeare says in Macbeth, that God has made it such that we can only see our faces in mirrors. You can't look at your face. It's an amazing thing if you think about that. You know, Allah made it, you can't see your face unless you look in a reflection. And yet everybody who looks at you can see your face. They can see the egg on your chin. You can't see the egg on... They go like this. Right? That's what people do. If you're talking and some thing, they'll go like this. Because you can't see it. Everybody else can see it. And you can't see it. And that's what the believer is. He's a reflection of his brother. In other words, you see your faults in him. You see your faults in him. That's a gift of a mu'min. And one of the things about the mutakabbir is that they have too much pride. So they get angry. They get angry. And there's other people. Imam Shafi'i, somebody asked him, radiallahu anhu, how he had such impeccable character. He said, I always listened to my detractors. And I took to heart what they said. And then I worked to remove their criticisms. And another one said, somebody asked him, how did you learn everything you know? He said, I took every person I ever met as a teacher. Either he was better than me and I learned things to improve myself, or he was worse than me and I learned things to avoid. So everybody can teach you something. The rude person, you remember, when somebody's being rude to you, you have to remember, what you're feeling is how other people feel when you're rude to them. So that's the gift of becoming aware that the heart needs help, is that you can improve, you can get better. And we have to, we should get better. I mean, we owe it to this ummah to become awliya. I mean, the Buddhists have a really interesting thing. They have these vows, and these monks have to say them every single day. They're really interesting. They have these 4 vows. They vow to overcome themselves every single day. They say, today I vow to overcome myself. And it's an interesting thing if you think about that, that you make a conscious vow. Today I'm going to do it. I'm going to overcome myself. And then they have a vow to give up desire every day. Today I'm going to give up wanting dunya. And then they have a vow to master the sacred law. Because they have a law, their books they study. But they make a vow every day to master the sacred law before they die. And then the 4th one is they vow to help other creatures. And we have similar thing, the idea of nadr. But I just thought that was interesting, that idea that every day you recommit to this work. This is the real work. I mean, once you realize that the only thing benefits you on Yawm al-Qiyamah is a sound heart, then we should get to work on the heart. Because أَلَا وَإِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ. It's a hadith muttafaq alayh. There's in the breast a lump of flesh. If it's sound, the whole body's sound. And if it's corrupt, the whole body's corrupt. Isn't it the heart? If you look at the world today, every single thing you see out there that's wrong with the world emanates from a human heart. Every war that's ever been fought, every act of cruelty that's ever been perpetrated, every act of injustice, every foul act, every theft, every act of backbiting, every act of namima, every dissembling act, every act of hypocrisy, it all emanated from a human heart. And had that heart been sound, that act wouldn't have manifested. The only way that corruption can come into the world is that it emanates from corrupt hearts. If the heart is pure, the actions of that person are pure. And if the heart's corrupt, the actions are corrupt. So if you want to rectify the world, you have to rectify human hearts. Because that's what's destroying the world. It's not, people say pollution. The problem is not pollution. Pollution is a symptom. People say, look at all this waste. It's a symptom. All of that's a symptom. Look at all these wars. Why are people fighting? Those are all symptoms. And if you work on the symptoms without going to the root causes, then you're just wasting your time. If a person suffering from malaria goes to a physician, the physician cannot treat him until he moves out of the malarial swamp. Because he's just going to get reinfected. You have to change the conditions that are causing the disease. And the conditions in the world, all the corruption in the world, it's all being caused by unsound hearts. And so that's where you have to begin. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was sent to perfect character. Where does character emanate from? Sound hearts. Sound hearts. إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. I was only sent to perfect noble character. Why was his heart washed 3 times? It was taken out of his breast. This heart surgery was performed on the Messenger of Allah ﷺ with light. Angels are beings of light. They cut open his breast. Now they have laser. Laser is just light. Light is sterile. Light is not contaminated. So angels opened up his breast. They put his heart into a cup that had ice in it. If you have ever watched a heart surgery, when they take the heart out for a transplant, they bring the heart in, it's in ice. That's what they do in a heart surgery. That's in the seerah. It's in the hadith. They put it in a bowl of ice. That's what you have to do because it slows down the metabolism of the cells so that the heart doesn't die. And then they poured over it Zamzam. Now, the other thing that they do, they bring in this, there'll be a guy with a pitcher and they're pouring on it what's called cryonic fluid. And it's fluid that has electrolytes in it, potassium and natrium muriaticum. And they're pouring it onto the heart because there's metabolic exchanges going on. So they keep the heart alive by giving it electrolytes. And one of the interesting things about Zamzam water is it's got high potassium and high sodium content. What they were doing was in accordance with modern knowledge, really. Divine surgeons, from Allah. They knew what they were doing. I mean, it's an amazing thing because I was actually worked in a cardiac unit, so I dealt a lot with cardiac surgery. But it just struck me as so amazing when I was studying that because I knew the hadith. I just said, SubhanAllah. So the Prophet ﷺ, his heart was pure. And that's why the people around him, their hearts were purified by being in his company. Because that's what happened. If you keep company of good people, you become like good people. You keep company of bad people, you become like bad people. One of the things about recidivism in prison, you get people that become Muslim in prison or they become Christian, whatever. They go back, and one of the horrible things, look at this, in parole, I don't know about this country, but in America, in the parole system, in America, the prisoner has to go back to the place where he was arrested. It's total madness. I mean, they put him right back in the environment that destroyed him in the first place. So it's like sending somebody who had malaria, now he's been treated, you send him back to the swamp. That's what they do. It's a horrible thing. These people, they really try to get better. A lot of them actually really try to get better. And then they go back, all their friends are there who haven't changed. Here's somebody, he's really changed. He's become Muslim, he's praying, he's fasting. He's got some spiritual strength. Suddenly he finds himself back in the same place. And all his old buddies come. And he feels strong. And this is one of the things Sidi Ahmed Zarruq reminds us. He says, never trust the nafs. If you've fallen into disobedience in a place, never feel strong about going back to it. Because he said, that's how ma'asiyah reoccurs. Is you get weak. You go back and you say, no, I'm not going to do it this time. You go back and you do it again. So this is what these people do. They go back to these places, and then the people say, oh, just come down and, oh, no, I'm not doing crack anymore. I gave that up. Yeah, that's okay. You don't have to do anything. Come on, just come down, see, Joey's down there, and just come down and see, we'll hang out, man. Don't worry about it. And he's, well, all right, I don't want to, because he's his friends and this and that. And he goes down, suddenly they're all firing up the crack cocaine, and they're all like, oh man, I feel this is really good. Come on, man, just take one hit. What's it going to do? This is how it happens. This is being repeated right now. There's people right now. I guarantee you, the cycle starts over again. Okay? And it's a human being. That's why you have to be in company. There was this interview of this monk I saw, and the monk said they get up every morning at 3 o'clock and start there chanting. And this guy said, isn't that difficult? He said, you know what? If I had to do it on my own, I'd never be able to do it. But there's 100 monks here. Everybody gets up. He said, it's really easy. It's the same here. Everybody's here. It's easy to go pray in the jama'ah because everybody's going to the jama'ah. But then when you go back to these places, you know, I feel a little tired. That's what happens. But here, everybody go. It's the strength of jama'ah. Inna Allah ma'al jama'ah. Allah is with the jama'ah. And that's what we've lost. We've lost jama'ah. When Sheikh Khatri came from Mauritania to America, he said that he noticed nobody smiled. Because one of the things about Mauritania, right, Sidi Ibrahim knows this, you go out in the desert, they're all smiling, right? People smile all the time. Because smiling is actually part of fitrah. The Prophet ﷺ smiled all the time. One of his names is Al-Bahak, the one who always smiles. He smiled all the time. One of the Sahaba said, from the day I became Muslim, I never once saw the Messenger of Allah except he smiled. From the day he became Muslim, he said, I never once saw the Messenger of Allah except he smiled. It's actually fitrah to smile when you see somebody. You know, it's a human being. You smile, he smiles, you feel good, he feels good. Right? And then you get these people. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Seriously, you go into the masjid, that's what this is. Assalamu alaikum. You know, just try a little harder on that one. Just a little harder. Like, Assalamu alaikum. You know, you don't even have to. Seriously, some people, it's like getting a tooth out of them or something to get a salam with a smile. But he said the reason he thinks none of them smile is because he said he noticed they do everything alone. So he said they have shayateen with them, they get depressed. Because shaitan rides alone. Rakibun wahidun, there's a hadith. Somebody who rides alone is a shaitan. And two of them, two shaitans. 3 is company. You look at, in the West, everybody in their cars alone. And who are they listening to? Shaitan on the radio. It's amazing. They're listening to shaitan. And they're driving alone. And then they go to work and they sit behind a cubicle alone. They don't talk to anybody. In California they say, send me an email. They don't even want to talk to them physically. They tell them, send me an email. Some of them have a sign. They just hold up a sign. They won't even say anything. Sheikh Khatri, when he was in New York, he said the strangest thing he saw, they were in all these cars, a traffic jam. And he said he looked over and he saw a car go in this place and it turned around. And then he said it stopped, it rolled down his window and it spoke to a box. And he said, and then the box, he said, كَلَّمَهُ بِلِسَانٍ فَصِيحٍ. It spoke to him in a clear tongue. And then he said the car drove up a little further and he said some hands came out of a window with a white box. And he said he gave him money and they didn't say anything to each other. He said he spoke to the box and he didn't speak to the person. It was a fast food restaurant. But he was just looking at it, just seeing it for the first time. You see, you grew up seeing this thinking it's normal. It's not normal. It's neuroses. It's a sickness. This is actually pathology. And somebody in fitrah can see it for what it is, but people that are out of fitrah, they can't see it. That's what he said. They go to work and then they go home, they eat alone. Somebody, if you eat, one person eat alone, shaitan eats with you. And shaitan just gets stronger and stronger. That's the thing about shaitan. People don't realize this. Shaitan gets strong with heedlessness. He gets weak with dhikr. The more ghafla, he gets strong physically because he's eating. If you don't do dhikr when you eat, like say Bismillah, he eats with you. And he gets fat. He has energy because he's got caloric strength. But if you say Bismillah, he can't eat, he starts getting weak and withers away. If you say Bismillah when you go into your house, he can't sleep with you. And that's the two shaitans, a hadith, sound hadith. They met, one was weak, the other was strong. He said, what's the matter with you? He said, I have a horrible assignment. Every time he eats, he says Bismillah. When he sleeps, he says Bismillah. When he goes to his wife, he says Bismillah. I'm not getting any strength. He said, oh, I've got a good one. He never says Bismillah and I eat as all I want. He goes home, I have a nice bed to sleep in. So now look at the whole world. I mean, Christians, they used to say, bless us, Lord, for these gifts which we're about to receive. They used to say that. And inshallah, it benefited them. They don't say that now. It's just gobble it down. And so the shayateen are getting bigger and bigger. And now they can just say their shayateen. They actually can say it now. They come out, really, they come out literally and say it. Like rock bands, they say that we're Satan. I mean, they literally announce it. I saw this guy, he had a thing. I worship Satan. Literally on his t-shirt. Spiked hair and everything. It said on his t-shirt, I worship Satan. And this is happening in Christian lands. They used to be anyway.